All right, welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 7th of May, 2025, and this is the SIG Cloud Provider office hours. SIG Cloud Provider is a sub-project of Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidelines, which can basically be summarized as please treat everyone as you would expect to be treated, or explicitly so, please be kind to each other. And if you'd like to talk, please raise your hand and I will call on you. So then, let me get the stuff up here. All right, cool. All right, so we have an agenda coming together here. Um, at the beginning, we'll give a little time for sub-projects to update if they have any updates. So if you are a sub-project maintainer and would like to share an update, please either raise your hand or unmute and share it. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone step forward for updates, so I guess we don't really have any updates for today. I had one item on the agenda, which I think we've basically covered, although I see Lucas is here today, so it's worth probably bringing up again. So Lucas, I think your issue is definitely seems to have landed well, and this is the I don't want to get it wrong here. This is the changing to watched, allowing for watch-based route controllers. I think the next step, like Joel and I have both taken a look at the document that you created, the draft. I think the next step is just to open an enhancement, and we can start having kind of deeper discussions there. Um, does that sound good to you, Lucas? Or are there any questions or anything from the group here?
Yeah, so thanks first of all for the feedback. Yeah, I've seen the comments and I will do so tomorrow to open up then the final draft pull request and then we can get further discussions, I think, in the pull request going.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. I don't imagine this will be that controversial, so I predict that, probably we're just going to clean up the language a little and then get it all merged and everything. But, you never know what comes up on review, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so that is our main agenda item for today, although I notice we have a lot of people here. So is there another topic that people would like to bring up for discussion?
I'll just mention that we're in the lazy consensus period for a notification of adding Joel Speed as a SIG Cloud Provider technical lead. So that will take effect, 1 week after having announced it, which I believe was Monday night. So we will have another tech lead on SIG, and all of you have been attending and seeing all of Joel's helpful commentary and answers and diving deep into solving problems will not be surprised at all, presumably. But um, I was out last meeting, so I wasn't here when we were announcing that this was coming. But so I missed whether Joel got to, say a few words, etc. But Joel, since you have said yes to our request to, come in as a technical lead while you're in the getting onboarded process, what is on your mind? Why are you interested in doing this? Is what I would love to hear.
Uh, that's a really great question. I've been working on the cloud provider stuff ever since I joined Red Hat and in fact even before. So I guess I've been around it for a long time. There's a lot of stuff that I've been involved in terms of like bugs and in particular like load balancers. Like obviously load balancers come into the CCM and the performance around there is something I spent a lot of time on last year. So I guess just yeah, trying to use that knowledge that I've gained in a good way to help others. Um, yeah, don't really know.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll look forward to that coming to fruition.
Yeah, +1. So, thank you. That was a good PSA to bring up there. Are there any other topics that folks would like to discuss? Otherwise, we will take back a mighty 50 some minutes of our day here, which I know is appreciated for most folks.
Well, I can't let that stand. I'm sorry.
Fair enough.
No, in all seriousness, I mean, we are at this junction of a transition point going from, get rid of the code and, declare success. The code's gone. That's great. But we have next steps. And I'm going to suggest even, and I think I've said this before, but I think we need to start having a plan. I know, so difficult. I want an actual plan. But I think we need a plan on some of the concrete details on how we fix what I think is the next problem for us to fix. And I at some point, I'm going to have to turn it over to Joel and Elmiko, because I think they've been driving a lot of this at the detail level more than I have. But I think we need to make the cloud provider repos actually cloud provider repos. They should probably have something that at least resembles a distro, and where we can have everything we need to bring a cloud provider up, or cloud provider, distro of a Kubernetes cluster up, and have the information in it that we need for doing those tests. And I think, Joel and Elmiko have been doing a great job. I would like to coordinate with them a little bit on Cloud Provider GCP. I'm happy to chat about that now or later. But I think there are some concrete things that we probably need to work out. I would, for reasons that have to do with Cloud Provider GCP and some internals things, I would love us to start to make a couple of inroads and decisions about things like, we believe make, irrespective of what you do in those make targets, I think we should say make is the build tool du jour. Here are the targets we expect to have exist. And doing those should work. And then maybe beyond, and then we start going down the road for a few more decisions, like this is the deployment tool that we expect to have happen. And we expect that, at the end of it, you will have a multi API server, multi etcd installation of Kubernetes running in your cloud with, all the other bits, right? This just seems like the sort of thing that everything else gets easier if we can get that sort of standardization done. And, and then we can start applying it across all the cloud provider repos. But it requires a plan. And then I think we all have to agree on the plan.
And I think we'll want to hear from Lucas and others too, who are bringing in, as well as, of course, our friends at Red Hat who are testing across clouds, just to make sure that what we come up with does make sense.
Yeah, so my question, I guess, to Walter, and I like what you're saying. I think it makes perfect sense. Is this the kind of thing that we would want to see as like a roadmap for the SIG, or should this ultimately become like if we're talking about some sort of standards for the like cloud provider repos, should this be an enhancement that we propose, ultimately to Kubernetes enhancements, or did you have something else in mind?
Actually, I think that's a great question. So my general take on this would be that we kind of suggest this is, we agree internally it's a proposal. And then it might make sense to do something like take this to SIG architecture, because technically it's our domain, but I mean, we kind of want to push it across. And I think getting SIG architecture's backing would make our lives easier. And then, yeah, I mean, and I think we want to partner. I mean, I'll say that at KubeCon, I went and talked to the kind folks, not so much promising anything, but saying, would you be amenable if we made you the, could we get support from you? Would you be amenable if we made you the default deployment system? And their general reaction was absolutely. And so I think our lives are easier if we don't try and go this alone. I will also say that I think, you know, if we look at, I'm going to throw myself and my cloud provider under the bus a little bit here, but I think that at some level, it makes sense if, you know, the folks who've been spottily trying to make sure cloud provider GCP works have been folks like Bowie, specifically on the networking folks, Antonio. So I think if we kind of, you know, work with them, make sure they're on board, it's going to take a little longer. But I think if we can show them a plan, show them a vision, and it makes their lives better, which I think it will, we can basically, you know, what was the coalition of the willing or whatever? I think we can basically generate a plan that leaves all of us in a better place. And I'll start with, you know, none of the folks in cloud provider GCP like QBOP. So any plan that involves getting rid of QBOP is going to generally be positive. I mean, it's going to be work, but I think, you know, if we can show the vision, I think folks will be willing to sign up and either do the work or at least let those who are willing do the work.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, it sounds ambitious, but I mean, I like ambitious, so like it's cool. Does anybody else have thoughts or comments or questions about this?
The first thing that springs to mind for me is rallying around Cluster API, right? It's a SIG Cluster Lifecycle project. It supports all of these different clouds. The UX for bringing up a cluster on each of the different platforms is pretty much identical. It feels like that would be an easy point for us. I guess the contentious issue could be which implementation would we use? I would assume kubeadm since that's default, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I think this is one of the first things to decide. I think either Cluster API or Kind. I mean, they both have support for, I think, all of the relevant flavors we need. I will say, I mean, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Kind has much fewer knobs to turn. On the other hand, Kind has much fewer knobs to turn. I think we want to try and have something that looks relatively standard everywhere, but beyond that.
Nolan, you got your
cops.
So I'm a little confused. How is Kind interacting with the cloud providers? I thought that was
sorry. I think I was confusing cops and Kind. My bad.
Okay, cops. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah, okay. The other question I had was on I'm sorry, I came in the middle of this. The consensus on build tools, is that going to mean cloud provider GCP is going to remove Bazel at some point?
That is certainly what I am trying more politically kindly to say. Yes.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, Walter's coming out as a make aficionado, right, Walter?
Yeah, well, and Nolan, for a little bit of background, Walter and I did talk about this at KubeCon, and I kind of brought up the Bazel points and stuff like that. And interestingly enough, I think Walter shared with me that like the first commit in that repo actually had that I think he wrote had a makefile as as the target for building, but that got kind of organically changed over time. So I think the notion is that yeah, we should have. I mean, the idea here is regardless of whatever the tooling is, right? It should be something that anyone in the Kubernetes community can like check out the repository and build the code or do whatever it is without needing some sort of special infrastructure that needs to be set up just for that build. Like granted, it will take you special infrastructure to get the actual cluster running and everything, especially if you're testing a specific cloud provider. But just getting to the point where you can like build the binary and run the unit tests, that should be something that's much more standardized across the repositories. I think that's really what we're trying to push towards. So in the case of the GCP repo, that might mean, having a make file in addition to having the Bazel targets or whatever. But for other cloud providers, it might mean something different.
Well, and beyond that, I mean, my opinions may show through. Blaze is an incredible tool if you have a lot of infrastructure and the local Blaze experts to help you out. If you're working at Google, Blaze is great, but we shouldn't be using things that just for people who work at Google, right? That's not the point of open source. And so I think, we should be trying to work out what is the best tooling for open source. And open source is already spoken on. I mean, not to be harsh on this, but open source is spoken on this. There were a bunch of folks at Google, not trying to, who pushed very hard for Bazel across KK. And at some point, people had enough and said no, right? And open source is spoken. They don't want Bazel, and I think we need to respect that.
Yeah, and not to belabor the point, but as someone who's come and done some small contributions to cloud provider GCP, I found Bazel kind of obtuse. But that's to your point for not having local experts that are easy to talk to about that. Whereas make in Kubernetes and in Go is just a lot more common.
I mean, right. And this is the point too. The point is to to what Walter was saying, we should be leaning into our open source, bona fides here. We should be making these projects in a way where it's welcoming for people to participate and contribute to them so that we can kind of lower that bar of entry for people who want to, participate in this space. It's already difficult enough to have these things tied to specific cloud providers. And, usually the activity they're doing is something you really have to kind of know your way around the cloud provider to understand, but we shouldn't layer on top of that, like a build tool that is, maybe difficult for someone to configure if they've never seen it before or those kind of things. So yeah, I mean, I think this all sounds really great. I guess the question is how do we start here? Should we start like a document where we start breaking out kind of some of the bigger ideas and talk about different, focus points we want to get in on, or, those kind of things? And who'd like to be involved? That's another great question. I guess we probably need to set up some sort of doc that we could share around and start, kind of hashing out some of this stuff.
Well, all right. I will. How about put an AI for me to have a preliminary doc in place by next. Maybe I'll be really mean. I hear we have a new a second new tech lead. Maybe I'll try and cajole our new tech lead into co-authoring with me. Yeah, how about but I won't actually be mean enough to put it on Joel. How about I take an AI to try and get a rough draft, and I do mean both rough and draft, for the next SIG Cloud Provider meeting.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, and rough draft is great. I think even if we just have a place where we can all collaborate with kind of with a loose outline of what we want to add and everything, I think that would be tremendous. So thank you, Walter, and yeah, we'll get to get our new our presumed new tech lead involved early on here. Right?
Yeah, I think the biggest things for me are understanding or clarifying as a group the goals and the user stories. And once we've got that, the rest we can kind of hash out.
Okay. And in the interim, while we were discussing, I did end up adding one more agenda item. We have the node lifecycle working group that I know some folks here have already weighed in on, or I think Elmiko was excited about. And we're now at the point where we're looking for people to be co-leads of the working group. So if for familiarity with how working groups work across SIGs, working groups are time delimited, task specific. They don't own code, and they, solve a specific problem with collaboration across SIGs, and then, dissolve when their mission is complete. For example, working group LTS was created, did some stuff, but was dissolved, was created again, and has been doing some stuff. So we have a request from Philippe to see, is SIG Cloud Provider going to send someone to co-lead this working group? And I think this is a great opportunity either for SIG leadership or for people who are not formally SIG leadership, but are interested in starting to get involved in some way and see this as relevant to their interests. Yeah, just kind of want to open the floor to, and yeah, feel free, Amigo, to pop open any of the stuff that we already talked about or that we want to look at. And I think that if you go to the proposal on GitHub, that kind of has more details. Yep. Right. Yeah, but basically, who would like to, if anyone, who would like to be the SIG Cloud Provider person who participates in this node lifecycle working group? And Almiko, I know you've already looked at this, so if you have more opinions to add, please do.
I mean, the only opinion I'll add is that, it's probably unfair to everyone else here, but I already voted on days that I thought I would want to go to the meeting, because regardless of whether or not I did not sign up for any sort of leadership on this working group. I just want to participate in the working group. But I think what you're talking about, Bridget, is great. It's a great opportunity for anyone here who would like to get more into this process. So I think, I'm not sure that the result of the doodle poll has been put out yet, but absolutely, if there's someone participating in this community who would like to, be the lead or the liaison from SIG Cloud Provider, I think that's amazing. Especially if you're willing to go to all those meetings and kind of bring back to us like what's going on there and help represent the interests of this SIG with respect to node life cycling. Because I think there's a lot like for my you know my selfish kind of interest in this is I also do a lot of work with autoscalers, and there are some autoscaling specific tasks. As you can see, SIG autoscaling is also a party to this. There are some autoscaling related issues that I would like to see kind of solved at a more holistic level. And I think when we talk about node life cycling, there's a lot of opportunity for the cloud providers, since we have this ability to kind of reach into the infrastructure and get detailed information. There's a lot of ability for a SIG Cloud Provider, I think, to have a meaningful role here. So if that sounds like interesting to you, or it sounds like a topic you'd love to dig further into, or even if you just want to get further into like what does it mean to be part of like Kubernetes SIGs and working group life and whatnot, yeah, like please, like you don't necessarily need to speak up in this meeting, or if you're watching a recording or something, reach out to us in the SIG Cloud Provider Slack channel, or on the email group or whatever. Would be happy to help, promote people, to participate in this working group. That's the best pitch I can give, I guess.
For now, at least, I can be a point person there unless anyone else is interested. This overlaps with some other stuff I'm kind of involved in, so
Yeah, awesome to hear. Yeah, you can see there's like, they've come up with a long list of, I don't know how much of this is going to get included in the end working group, but there's like a long list of things they want to go through here and stuff. So yeah, happy to have your participation, Joel.
Awesome. I will answer Philippe out of band and loop Joel in with that, just because he was messaging me over on Slack and being like, hey, I'm like, all right. Clearly it's important for SIG Cloud Provider to care. So
I mean, I think
thank you.
so, because, oh, sorry, my thing's getting all messed up here. I think it's really important for SIG Cloud Provider to be involved, because like there's going to be like one of the big issues that's coming up now that we're dealing with is like coordinating when certain resources will be available in certain nodes. And in the past, this has been kind of an ad hoc approach, especially from tools like like the cluster autoscaler. And now we're seeing with dynamic resource allocation, there's been a whole enhancement and like a lot of activity around how does this get, how does this get into a Kubernetes cluster? And I think, my personal feeling is that we probably might have missed some opportunities here where the cloud providers have the ability, to query into the infrastructure to know more about what the instance types are that are being created. And I think there's probably an opportunity for there to be more metadata exposed through the cloud controllers themselves to help with other applications in coordinating the arrival of hardware. So, one of the ways this appears is you can imagine, in the world we're moving into where like GPUs can be dynamically attached during the initialization process for a node. That's the kind of thing that if you know a GPU is going to be available or any sort of specialized hardware, it's possible that as the node is being created, the cloud controller has the ability to set a condition or a taint or something, some sort of information on the node object that would inform other controllers then that they might need to wait in order for a resource to arrive, or that some specialized hardware is going to be there, but it's not there yet or something. And these are the kind of coordinations, especially we haven't even got into kind of life cycling that I think could be really important for cloud providers. Yeah, Walter, please.
So I've heard this before, and one thing I will say on this, and I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to duck my head and get out of it, is DRA is the DRA working group is thinking about this, and anyone who is interested in things like waiting on these sort of resources to come up, I would highly recommend go talk with John Bellamaric on the DRA team. And after that, I'm piecing out on this subject.
Appreciate the reference there, because I am interested in that. And like, I think I talked to John at KubeCon, but I don't know if we talked about this or not. So yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you. Okay. I guess, is there any other discussion on this topic or any questions that people might have?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, I guess we should probably, if there's no other agenda item topics, we should probably check over the issues that need triage, because I think I saw one in there that had come up recently, although maybe not. Maybe it's already been triaged. Let's go to all open issues. I was just looking at one the other day that looked like maybe this is it. Okay, yeah, this was the one we're looking at. I'm not sure if this is something we need to get involved with or not, but it looked interesting to me, and someone had tagged SIG Cloud Provider, I think because of maybe what it was touching on and whatnot. But essentially, there was some RBAC associated with the KCM. When things were in tree, there was some RBAC associated with the way that the controllers worked. And when we migrated out, some of the RBAC was left behind. And so like there's this effort now to kind of look and see, okay, do we need to adjust these roles, or can we limit, kind of the exposure here? And I think Carlery had kind of rightly identified here that, if we ever decide to get into, kind of the code that spawns the controllers, and I think that's what he was talking about, we might want to, and we want to switch this to like a dynamic builder at some point, like, because right now we're just using the simple builder. If we switch to the dynamic builder at some point, we'll probably have to review this RBAC and change it. And I don't know if that was ever something that we were considering, thinking about, but I just thought it was something we should probably discuss here just to see if anybody had thoughts about. And this might be the kind of thing where we want to review it and come back to it. But because I think it's already been triage accepted. Yeah, like Standa triage accepted it, probably on behalf of SIG Cluster Lifecycle, I'm guessing, or maybe SIG Auth, probably. Yeah. So, anyways, I don't know if anybody has questions about this or whatnot. I'm put a note in the in our agenda here, just something maybe to follow up on. So if you're interested in kind of looking at this stuff in RBAC, I think that's something that I'm not sure we necessarily have to weigh in there, but I think it's a good question regardless. So looking at the other issues though, it looks like we still just have this one here that, we kind of agreed needed investigation from someone in GCP. I think that's all we were kind of waiting on here. Yeah, I think this still probably needs, some more investigation there. Yeah, there's like a flake that comes up on this test, I guess. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good.
I can drop that one in chat here if you wanna grab it.
I got 129926. I got the number.
Cool. Alrighty, let's look at the periodics just to see if we have anything that looks really bad. All right, looking pretty good there. Go back historically here. We usually get a couple flakes. Yeah, there we go. Where is this so this is some admission webhook test that's failing out. I'm guessing this is probably not, specific to cloud provider, but could be. But it looks clean for now, so. All right. I think that pretty much concludes what we've done here today. Any last minute thoughts or questions or queries people have?
One quick comment from API Server Network Proxy for Elmico and Bridget. I sent on Kubernetes, Kubernetes org. There's a PR that I sent to the two of you for adjusting the permissions. And in fact, we may want to feel free to suggest now that Joel is officially our member that we further adjust them to include Joel. But I did play with cleaning up a lot of our ownership, at least on the API Server Network Proxy. If you would like me to further clean up for the rest of the SIG, I can do that as well. But just that is an area that needs cleaning up. And I did send you guys a PR for that.
Yeah, I think we merged it in the last day or so.
I missed that. I'm sorry.
GitHub notifications are, of course, delightful. But I think that I was thinking, oh, should we include Joel? And then I thought next week.
If you're offering though to clean up some of the other owners files, like I think that's probably, it's one of these tasks where it's like evergreen basically. So yeah, like if you wanted to and add and like if we wait a week and there's no objections, we can add Joel to those as well, or at least get him into the core aliases and whatnot. I noticed when talking with some of the AWS folks that it looked like we probably need to review some of the extended repository ownerships and whatnot. And we probably also want to consider whether SIG Cloud Provider like leads or whatever should have some sort of maintainership on these things, because what I noticed was there are repositories and directories, ownership directories, where technically SIG Cloud Provider is the owner, but we don't have the ability to approve changes there. And so that was one of those things where it's like, well, should we be updating these to include the alias for the leads? I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not. I just thought we should bring it up maybe to look at it.
I agree we should bring it up. I think maybe if we're talking about the cloud provider repos in this document I'm going to propose next week anyway, maybe we should touch on this there. But my my general point is I'm not sure that if you're not a main contributor, that you should be going around approving willy-nilly. But I think as a break glass aspect, we should probably be we should have the permissions of last resort. So if something untoward is happening, that we are ready to deal with it.
That was kind of my thinking too. And where this had come up was, I think one of the AWS maintainers had reached out to me because they wanted to clean up owners files to take people out. And I was like, yeah, these changes look good to me. You can tell these names haven't been working on these projects in a while. And it was in an area of the configuration that probably should have been owned by SIG Cloud Provider, but just wasn't. So I was like, okay, yeah, this is one of those break glass kind of moments where it's like, okay, yeah, like I should be able to approve this. But yeah, anyways, thank you, Walter, for taking a look at it. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our regularly scheduled meeting for today. I guess enjoy taking back about 20 some minutes of your day, and thanks everybody for participating in our project. See you all next time.
Thank you.